we're going to be talking about risk management. I'm Nicola.
And I'm Wendy. And together we're Corporate Conundrums. So risk management, top 5 tips. What's number 1, Nicola?
Well, let's start with what is a risk.
Okay.
So tend to be that people think of issues as risks. A risk is something that has not happened yet and is at risk of happening. So the wording would be like, there is a risk that we lose connectivity, not the issue of we have lost connectivity.
Yeah.
So it's really clear that when identifying risks, you start off with clarifying what is a risk and making sure that everybody within the team that's looking at risk management understands that first step.
I think there's confusion between hazard and risk as well. So a hazard would be a rickety staircase, but walking up and down it would then become a risk, and the number of times you walked up and down it would be the amount of risk.
That's right.
Great. Number 2.
The risk being, would you fall off? Is the risk that somebody might fall off the stairs?
Yes. Well, yes. Rickety staircase. Anyway.
Right.
Number 2.
Number 2 is identifying risks. So we need to identify them. It's an activity that really ought to be done on an ongoing basis, but usually we have to start somewhere. So you're getting your stakeholders together, you're working out the right people that would be involved, and you're looking at kind of key areas of risk. Now in business, that might be financial risk, it could be reputational risk, it could be injury risk, it could be flood hazard, etc. It could be all sorts of things that may have a possible impact to your business. You need to identify them all and make sure that they're written down in an initial session, but then you need to do that on an ongoing basis, minimal monthly, but ideally, just as something comes up, you should identify it and then make sure it's added to that risk log.
Great stuff. Number 3.
Number 3 is we need to talk about what's the likelihood of it happening. People like to talk about business continuity, where literally we have a huge flood and the whole building is then knocked out of work. And so people can't do anything. And so but that's not particularly likely to happen unless you live in a flood zone.
Right, okay,
so
got you.
But then you've got other risks that are very likely to happen. Perhaps somebody's going to post something on your Facebook page that talks about a really bad experience they had with your product, and suddenly that's out there and everybody can see it. And really, we have no control over what people do on those circumstances. So the likelihood of that happening is very high.
Got you. So what's the risk? Identify. What's the likelihood of it happening? And number 4?
Number 4 is severity, because again, lots of risks could happen. But really, what sort of impact does that have on you, your employees, your customers, your reputation? Because we really need to put some context around this. So yes, it's quite likely that somebody's going to post something on your Facebook page. But actually, what's the severity of that? Well, perhaps you've got 10,000 customers who are all very, very happy. So one person posting as a negative, it's not particularly severe. In fact, it could be an opportunity for you then to build that relationship with that customer and tackle their problem. So we really need to assess that. Whereas if we had this force majeure where suddenly the heavens open and flooding everywhere and the business is shut down, the severity of that is very high, but very low in likelihood. So we need to assess each one of our risks independently looking at this. Now, kind of point 4B is then to take that likelihood and that severity and to work out a contingency. Because when we look at the operating costs of a project or operating costs of a business, we assume everything's going to go fine. And of course, what we should do is we've maybe worked out that project's going to cost £10,000. We now look at the risks and the likelihood, and we can do a calculation to work out how much money do we then need to put aside and add to that £10,000 to cope with that risk actually coming to fruition. So if it's quite likely that somebody's going to post on the Facebook page, and the way we're going to manage that is we're going to hire a person to keep on top of it, to check maybe once a day, and then if something does happen, they're then going to get involved on a daily basis. There's an amount of money we'll need to have put aside to pay for that person. Or a project, if perhaps the supply of building blocks has not arrived, the project's now delayed, there's a cost to that. So we need to make sure that our project cost of £10,000 is increased to keep aside money for that risk. So it's really important. It's a step that tends to get missed out within risk management, and we stick with our £10,000, as we know from many house building projects we might see on TV, and so many of them go over budget. But they wouldn't have gone over budget if the budget had included the money for contingency.
Good stuff. And lastly, Nicola?
Step 5, very important, it's mitigation. It's all very well listing all your risks and having a nice piece of paper and something that you can review every month. But really what you want to do is you want to be reducing the severity of risks, and you want to be reducing the likelihood of them. And the word we use to call that is mitigation. So let's put inside an owner to say who's now going to own that risk, and who's going to now tackle things. So perhaps if we know that it's quite likely we're going to get a flooding, then perhaps what we do is we buy in sandbags ready. So we're mitigating it if it happens.
Yes,
or we might have a subsequent premises somewhere else ready for us just to move into. We might move building and go to one that's at the top of a hill so never gets flooded. There'll be a number of things that we can do, and depending on the cost and impact to our business of the risk, we'll do a bigger or smaller item to mitigate.
Lots of things there. Thank you very much, Nicola. Quick recap. So the 5 things, first of all, what is the risk? Identify, then look at the likelihood of the risk happening. Number 4, severity, and lastly, mitigate against it. So, make sure that you're actually mitigating against whatever risk might be there in the first place.
In the meantime, tick the bell and you'll be notified of all future podcasts.
Bye. Bye.